Yo, yo, it's your boys back here again. So, got a special one here. I just can't do too much, Ben. I want to talk to the guest. So, from here, let's do a little bit of rundown sheet from there. So, he's a commentator on Max Muaythai. He runs the photography and journalist site Muaythai Focus. You can say he's the ambassador for Muay Thai for all us followings. It's the man himself that runs Kiatphontip gym, Kiatphontip gym,
Yep.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm bad with the pronunciations. It's Mr. Rob Cox.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, mate. How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome, mate.
Looking
Yeah.
forward to this.
Oh, great. Thank you for coming on. Yeah. So when we first have someone on the podcast, we always ask about their background from there. So like one of the first things we want to ask you is like, what was your first martial art experience and how did you end up just kind of really just diving into Muay Thai?
Basically, I kind of started out, I mean, obviously I did judo, stuff like that when I was a kid at school. And just after I left school, I kind of got interested and I was reading the martial arts magazines and I started out doing Wing Chun in London. And it was kind of, I enjoyed it and kind of got into it a bit. But at that time, there was kind of this kind of weird political situation with Wing Chun. There was two different kind of groups and they were against each other. And the place I was training at, the teacher was good. He was great, but he was very caught up in all that. And it was kind of, it got a little bit silly in my mind. They were going to each other's gyms and challenging each other and fighting and whatever.
Oh,
and,
dojo storms.
Nice.
Yeah, it was. It literally was coming down to that. And I kind of but I was buying the magazines. There was the magazine in England called Fighters and one called Combat. And I was kind of reading them. And Muay Thai was just starting to take off in England and in Europe then, and there was the likes of Ronnie Green. And in Holland, you had Rob Cox and people like that. And I thought, oh, this looks interesting. And there was a class where I was doing Wing Chun. There was a gym there, and I'd kind of not paid any attention at first. And I spoke to someone, I'll go and train there. It's probably one of the best gyms in London, a gym called Cobra Gym. And the guy that ran it, Vince Jauncey, he'd been to Hong Kong and fought. He'd trained in Thailand. He was one of Master Toddy's guys from the early days. And he actually emigrated to Canada. His son, Josh Jauncey, fights in Glory now. But that was the first guy I trained with. It was one of them kind of magical moments, I suppose. I walked down the corridor in the Queen Mother Sports Centre in Victoria, London. I walked down the corridor, I looked through the door, and it was just like, boom, this is what I want to do, And seeing all the guys sparring and hitting pads, and it kind of not blew me away, but it was like, yeah, this is it. This is what I want to do. So I started training there, and it was kind of weird at first. They had a few good fighters, one top fighter at the time, and he still runs a gym now. This was like 33 years ago, a guy called Tim Isley, and he was kind of very good kind of crossover really. And back in those days, you didn't just have pure Muay Thai shows. There was very few kind of shows that they could put on that could just put a full Muay Thai card. So it was full contact karate, kickboxing, and Tim was kind of very much more of a full contact or kickboxing style. And that's kind of what I got into at first. And I was kind of, bought the Bill Superfoot Wallace, I forget what they call Superfoot. There was like foot pads and shin pads, or you look like you got a pair of moon boots on. But that's what I wanted to do. I was trying to learn axe kicks and hook kicks, and then one day Vince used to have a show near where I lived, because I lived on the edge of London, and he had a kind of show, a class just outside London. Went to the class there, and just by chance he got a video that he'd lent someone. He said, "Oh, Rob, do you want to borrow this?" And it was all that Lumpini Stadium and some fights in Hong Kong with Thais. And it was the classic guys, like Sam Hart and people like that. And I put that on, and that was it. Right, then moon boots are going in the bin. Muay Thai for me from now on. And that was it. And then about a year later, I went to Thailand for the first time, 1991. And I was hooked from then on,
Ah, nice. So when you went to Thailand, was it a few trips until you decided to go, look, I'm staying. You got me. Yeah. I'm going to stay here.
Well, I went the first time. I went with a mate I used to train with, and it was kind of weird how it happened. I just fell in love with the place, not just the Muay Thai, but that was just incredible, First time at Lumpini Stadium, the hairs on the back of the neck. I still get them now, but it was just incredible. The atmosphere back then as well, the golden era, as they call it, the crowds was bigger. There was, you'd be lucky to find 10 people foreigners sat ringside, whereas nowadays the whole of the ringside section is foreigners. The Thais, they're kind of not as interested anymore, unfortunately. But the food, everything, the weather, the culture, the people, I was hooked. But the mate I went with, he kind of, I don't know, it do it for him. And he kind of stopped training not long after, but went back for a month. And I was planning to go back to university at the time as a mature student. I'd saved some money up and just literally on the plane coming back from Bangkok, I was like, I ain't doing that. I don't want to do that. Yeah, came back, saved as much money as I could, and I came out for 6 months. A year later, went back all depressed. I don't want to be anywhere else but Thailand. I don't want to do anything but train and be, go to see the fights at Lumpini Ratcham. Came back for 9 months, and then I kind of thought, I probably should settle down a little bit, do the regular thing, settle down, save up, buy a house. So I did that, but I kept coming back to Thailand backwards and forwards for until 2001, and it was kind of like, I was in my 30s then. I was like, I had this itch there, just got to come back for one more time. And I was teaching Muay Thai in London at the time, and it was going well. I had a couple of busy classes, some money was coming in, but I still had this itch. I want to come back to Thailand. Right, I'll come back for a year, maybe 2 years, have a few more fights before I get too old, and then I'll try and come back and try and set a full-time gym up in London. Of course, one thing led to another. 19 years later, I'm still here. So I've got a gym, a wife, kids, a house, so I don't think there's much chance of me going back and starting that gym in England anymore.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's like, I think you've done pretty well so far.
Yeah.
Might as well just keep it going.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I love. It's like that old cliche, do what you love and you never work a day in your life. And it has been a little bit like that. I'm not saying it's every day's perfect and every day you're smiling and punching the air, but there is that to it, definitely.
Oh yeah, definitely, mate. Like, it's like I own the gym as well. Like, some days I go, oh man, this is pretty rough. But then I remember when I decided to make the switch, go, for combat sports and run a gym, it's like I was underneath someone's house doing wiring. I go, this is a fucking mug's job, mate. And
I used to repair trucks and coaches and stuff and buses for a living, and it's just like covered in dirt and oil, and you're like, take me to Thailand. That was the whole purpose when I was working, get enough money to come back out here,
This is you. You're looking into the future right now. I'm pretty sure. He's on the same path.
I'm down with that.
So let's kind of like go like the difference of cultures as well. So you've had a few fights in the UK, and you had fights in Thailand. What were the main differences that you saw? Like, like weigh-ins, actual fighting, the crowds as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much less kind of, when you see the fights in Thailand, they tend to put so much less pressure on it. It's just like, you just get in and fight, it's a fight. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the West, everyone's kind of, I need a 20-week fight camp and I need a dietitian, and do you know what I mean? And it's like, but it's in Thailand, it's kind of like you could be in the gym in the morning, you've done a 10K run in the morning, and the trainer comes in, there's a fight tonight, come and get in the car, and you're getting your hands wrapped in the car on the way to, and they just kind of like, oh yeah, whatever, it's what we do, Whereas I think in the West, there's so much pressure people put on themselves, whereas in Thailand, it's just, you do Muay Thai, you fight, and that's kind of how it is, There's not so much emphasis on perfect record. You got to have 30 fights, no losses. A lot of top guys. Sanchai, he's lost, probably over 100 fights in his career. Maybe that might be a bit excessive, but I mean, he's had that many fights. At least 50 fights he's lost. Whereas in the West, someone said, he lost 50 fights. They'd be like, what are you doing that for? Do you know what I mean? But they'll see it here as a learning experience. You get something from it. If you don't get bashed up and hurt too bad, you learn from it, and you it's all part of becoming, a proper boxer.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So there's none of that kind of pressure, and and obviously the difference is in the West. Whenever I fought in the West, I was working 5-6 days a week, trying to fit in training around that, and probably not the best diet. Whereas here, it's just, you get up in the morning, you go for your run, you do your morning training session, you go to bed for a few hours, and then you get up and you do it, train in the afternoon, you have a good feed, and then, you just relax, and it's just so much easier, really.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's just, you're just selling that lifestyle, mate.
Yeah, it is. You just live it and breathe it,
Definitely.
Yeah. You touched on a few things that I find interesting. I'd like to get your thoughts on, but just to stick with where we're at with, kind of explaining those sort of cultural differences with the approach to the sport. So you obviously run a gym over there, and you get a lot of Western fighters come over to do that sort of authentic style of training. How do you find, you know, because obviously your training it's very Thai style. You know, it's very authentic. It's like, do you find there's a bit of a culture shock a lot of the time? Do you think Westerners know what they're in for to kind of integrate to that Thai style of training? Or do you think there's a bit
some
of
do. Some do. A lot don't. You know, and a lot kind of come out with maybe unrealistic expectations. You know what I mean? You know, I mean, I can remember in the past, people, when I was at another gym and there's this guy's brought a couple of foreign guys over. I won't mention any names. And he's like, oh, they want to learn technique. They want to learn technique. You know, they're not showing them enough technique. But with their Thais, it's all about, a lot of it's about repetition and just constantly working and getting that muscle memory. So it's almost like it's natural when they, you know, and I, all right, I'll go and talk to the boss. I'll go and sort it out. I said, yeah, they're complaining a bit. They're not getting enough technique. They want to learn more technique. And he just said, he spent 4 hours showing him a technique yesterday afternoon, and by today, he's forgotten it already. What's the point? Just getting a try, you know. And you know, it's just keep doing it, you know. But obviously the work rate as well, you know, like you say, that can be a massive culture shock, you know. And I'd recommend anyone that was coming to Thailand, never been before, you know, get your cardio, get your road work up before you come, because the better shape you're in, you know, the more you're going to get out of the trip, you know.
We've actually got a listener question as well from William Liu. He's a fight photographer. Are there any recommendations on people who want to work and live in Thailand, especially in the fight scene?
Have very, very low expectations financially for a start. Don't expect you're going to get rich. I mean, it's a very difficult area to get into, to be honest with you, especially if you're not from Thailand. You don't really understand the culture so much. And you know, I had an advantage when I started to get into the journalism side of things. I'd already been coming to Thailand for well over 10 years by then, and I already spoke Thai pretty fluent. I could read Thai. So straight away, there's an edge there, you know, because it's all about connections, and, you know, you've got to try and make that connections. And but I mean, someone like William, I mean, he'd do well, I'm sure of it, because he's got a great work ethic, and he's always trying stuff. You know, he's doing that In Focus podcast. He's brilliant, you know.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Someone like him, you know, with it, you've got that high work ethic. You've got to be prepared to graft. I was also lucky in the sense that when I started doing it, there wasn't many people doing it, because I am probably the #1 procrastinator. So, you know, I kind of broke the mold where I was lucky in the sense of there was only me, or not only me, there was a few other people doing it at first when I first started getting into it. But, you know, you do need to work hard.
And it's quite a unique position to be in as a foreigner coming into Thailand, to live it all, but especially to actually open and run a gym.
Yeah.
Was there anyone really at the time that you were starting out, you know, other foreigners that you could kind of go to for advice and stuff like that? Like, did you have kind of touch point for someone to kind of mentor you through some of that stuff, or you were sort of on your own?
Not particularly. It was kind of like a learn as you go experience to some degree. I mean, there was Andy Thompson up in Chiang Mai at Lana Camp. You know, Andy was always a good guy, gave me some advice. Sadly, he passed away a little while ago. There wasn't many foreigners involved in gyms. You know, places maybe like Pattaya, you had a little bit. Phuket wasn't a massive scene. I mean, now Phuket's almost like another country in terms of Muay Thai. You know, it's grown into this massive kind of scene that's almost different to the rest of Thailand in a way. But I mean, that's made it easier for foreigners to a certain degree. But I mean, I was kind of, I started doing, I was living up in Ubon, up in the northeast, and there was a Japanese friend of mine, Tazaki, who was at a famous camp, Pormong Ubon, you know, Arono and Nung Ubon was from. And it just kind of happened by luck more than anything. There was this old Japanese guy decided he wanted to help Nung Ubon out and open a camp and give him some money to do it. And me and Sasaki, we'll help out trying to promote it. And it was kind of the internet was kind of a newish thing then. So luckily I had a friend of mine that had a business in the Philippines, and he was designed us a website for free. He was a software engineer, and he designed us a website, and it was kind of, we learned as we went along, basically. You know, as I say, there was a few other Western gyms kind of going there, and there was in Thai terms for accepting foreigners. You had places like Sit Yot Tong, Sasi Prapa. There wasn't a lot of gyms, you know. And then I got, after kind of a couple of years doing that up in Ubon, I got the offer to work at Kiatphontip gym, and that was a big learning curve. You know, obviously I went down there, and the idea of promoting and marketing the gym, and just learned as I went, really. With my own gym now, I'm kind of lucky in the sense of I've got my family that I can trust, my wife, father, people like that, you know, without having very, very strong connections with locals, ties. You know, it's kind of a scary proposition, to be honest with you, you know, because you never know who you're dealing with, and you never know what they're after. And you don't know the people. Do you know what I mean?
Do you think it's sort of, as far as like succeeding in such a scary venture, it comes down to like prioritizing learning to understand the culture and learning to
definitely. You know, that's very important. You know, I've seen people come in and sort of try and start gyms up, and that whole kind of Western, is it Jayen, Jairon, cool heart or a hot heart, and you know, you expect everything to get done in a Western way, bang, bang, bang. I want this done, I want that done, and it doesn't work like that. You know, you kind of got to go with the flow a little bit and have that cool heart, and say sabai, which is easy going. If you don't have that to a certain degree, and I'm lucky, I'm quite easy going anyway. You know, you could end up going around the bend quite quickly. You know, because there are big cultural differences. You know, and it does get in the way, you know, and you have to accept that, because if you try and think you're going to come to Thailand and change the Thai way of doing things to your way to run a gym, and that, you know, that's not going to happen.
Is it something you see commonly? Like, you think people who are coming in trying to follow a similar path, like open a gym, but are not respecting the idea that they've got to go the Thai way?
Yeah, I've seen it a lot. You know.
Did you get people reaching out to you like for advice? Or do you get, you know, people touching base with you to say, hey, I want to come over and open a gym? And
I always try and be honest with them and say, don't do it. You know, but not everyone listens. No, you can make a success of it. You know, you can make it, but it's not easy. You know, there's times you think, oh, what am I doing this for? I mean, I remember, you know, just my wife, she was kind of like pushing to do it when we opened this gym. You know, oh, let's open the gym. And brother was in England. He was kind of, I've got some money to put into it. And I was at Kiatphontip at the time, and the owner's wife, she'd say to my wife, oh, don't do it. Oh, running a gym, it's a nightmare. Oh, he says, you get so many headaches. And my wife's kind of like, yeah, she's just saying that she doesn't want you to leave, and blah, blah, blah. What have you. And then about, I don't know, maybe not even 6 months after we started the gym, she's kind of, I should have listened to her. It is, you know, it's hard work.
Oh, yeah. That's like, well, like you're talking about your gym from the Kiatphontip. Where does the name come from?
It comes from Kiat, kind of means pride. I mean, it can have a lot of the Thai words have different meanings depending on the context and how you're saying them. But Kiat kind of means pride, and Pon is like a village in the south of Thailand, where the gym started, my wife's village, and Tip just kind of is like a, I'm not even sure what that means. It's kind of just like a word that they put on the end of Kiatpon to make it a little bit more, I don't know, look nicer kind of thing. If that makes sense. But so it's basically, it's the pride of the village, that village in the south where all the boxers started.
Oh, nice. At the moment, well, sorry, not at the moment because it's Corona, obviously. Yeah. It's like before that went down, like in your stable, was there a few fighters that you were pretty excited about, like, you know, looking like they're going to make some serious waves?
Well, we've had quite a few, but I mean, you know, that comes down to another thing that kind of people don't expect from the West when they're looking at running gyms in Thailand and how gyms are run and the boxes and whatever. Is it's so hard now with the Thai kids to find one that's kind of focused and dedicated, and you've got 4 big problems that you're always going to face in Thailand running the gym with the Thai fighters: motorcycles, girls, drugs, and family. And you know, we produced some very good fighters. We had Kid Peteng. He beat Satamung Lek a couple of times. He won a WMC title. He was ranked number 1 at Lumpini, kind of 105, 108, 100. Every time he kind of moved up a weight, he'd end up ranked number 1. He won the WBC belt in Osaka, and he kind of got into gambling a bit, and he was betting on the fights and whatever. And as soon as you start doing that, it becomes dangerous because the gamblers, they'll sniff that out. And if he starts fighting badly one day, they'll suspect that he's lost a lot of money gambling, and he's throwing the fight to pay off his gambling debts, or that's a way for them to try and get to them if he does lose a lot of money. So straight away, his credibility is kind of wiped out almost, So and he just went off his own way. He was doing a service like online where people would pay him so much a month, and he'd commentate the odds, and it's a big thing in Thailand. They call it send a signal, and they'll be watching the fights on the TV, and they'll be going into the phone, 5-1 red, 5-1 red, and as the odds change, they keep the commentary changes, So he went off doing that. We had another kid that was really good, ranked number 1 at Ratcham at £105 when we had a problem with him, and the promoter rung up and said, right, he's got a Ratcham title shot next fight, and his mum and dad got in his ear, and they were obviously listening to other people. And one of the problems, if you get very high level fighters in Thailand, if you're a small gym, you've got the big gyms, the big gambling gyms, they're prepared to throw a lot of money at the boxers, and often they'll get in the fighter's head, or someone close, not necessarily the gym itself, but someone else who thinks he's going to make a few quid, he'll jump in and get in the boxer's ear or the family's ear and say like, oh, if he comes to this gym, we'll give him the whole purse. We won't take any, because somewhere like, say, for example, PK Sanchai or Jit Mung Non, sometimes when their fighters win and they bet big, they don't take a cut out of the purse of the fighter. And, small gyms like ours where you're relying on the money, you can't afford to do that. So straight away the kid's kind of like, oh, that's going to be better for me, And often the guy that's gone to them to get in the ear, he's going to tell the gym like, oh yeah, they're going to buy him for 300,000 baht. And he goes back to the gym that wants to buy him and says, oh yeah, they're going to sell him for 500,000. So that 200,000 baht goes straight in his pocket, So you get lots of stuff. We had that with a really good talented kid, and lost him because of that. We got a good bit of money for his contract, but when you're putting your heart and soul into it and trying to build the fighters up and dreaming of having champions, that doesn't really cover it, But unfortunately, that's the name of the game. And that's another thing where the whole cultural side of it, if you're a foreigner coming into Thailand, you're probably your best bet if you want to open a gym is forget about trying to raise champions and superstar fighters, because it's a headache,
Yeah. It's like, well, one thing I just always want to know for myself is with fighters, like when you get them young, when they come in, they're not treating it the same way as Westerners, are they? Like, it's like, I want to be this. It's like, it's a job. Pretty much
and also the expectations as well a little bit. The gyms will say, "Oh, this kid is mustard," but they see such a turnaround, of fighters that kind of got that potential. Like, for every Pampiak or Superlek, there's probably about 200 kids that could be just as good as them, but they just get to 14, 15, and they want to go out and have beer with their mates or go off with their mates, racing motorbikes or girls or whatever, and they just haven't got that drive, that necessary kind of fire in them to become a top fighter. Just as talented, if not more so sometimes. I've seen hundreds of kids that could have been as, at that level, but they just give up, But it's very much, it is to them, it's more of it's just a job, you just go in and fight and sort of try and get to a certain and make money basically.
So it's either fight or run a store. So like you got to bring you got to send the bar back home, don't you?
Yeah. A lot of it does, most of the fighters are from either from Isan, the northeast, or from the south, and they're from poor families. A lot of them have got nothing, and without their money coming in from the fights, they really struggle. And some of them all of a sudden they've got a pickup truck and that can help with the farming and a not nicer house,
Yeah, definitely.
And now switching gears slightly, now you talk about like, maybe you wouldn't recommend to someone who wanted to start a gym trying to sort of raise, champion fighters from their youth. You've also had, you're a regular spot for a lot of high level Westerners and have had some long days there. I know Toby Smith has spent some time at Kiatphontip. A couple of my friends have been there heaps, David Penenpede.
Yeah, David, he's one of our long-term guys. Obviously through Danny, you know, Danny's a good friend of mine. I've known for years, and he's always brought his guys to us. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of almost made a conscious decision a couple of years ago to maybe focus more on that. You know, obviously, you need a little bit of a lure for Westerners to come in some respects. So sometimes, you know, if you've got no Thai fighters at the gym, it's just a foreigner gym. But you know, the trainers are all Thai. And a lot of the trainers, they might not have a big name, but they produced many big names, you know. So it's kind of like, you've got to try and find a little bit of a balance, have some Thais there to attract people in. But at the same time, you know, focuses on guys like David, and we've had a guy, Sam Goff from England, Josh Hill, a very good Peruvian kid, Nicholas Young.
Yeah,
he got silver medal in the last IFMA World Championship and lost on very close fight with a very high level stadium fighter, and he's a very good prospect. And it's just, it's so much easier to deal with. You know, you haven't got the hassles of the family getting involved, or, you know, they've flown all that way to become a top level fighter, and that's their goal, their aim, their tunnel vision almost, if you know what I mean. So, you know, you're not having to send someone out on a motorbike to chase them to make sure they're doing the run in the morning. Do you know what I mean? Or they're not running off and hiding in the bushes. I mean, I used to saw it. I mean, it's been like that way for years. You know, not just with my team. I remember 20 odd years ago, I was at Sortanicon in Bangkok, and we go out for the morning run, and we get about a kilometre up the road, and then, Rob, quick, come in here, and run off in the bushes. And I'm like, I don't want to run, I want to train. And they're all hiding around the corner, and just in case, and then the trainer will go past on a motorbike, and one of them's peering around the corner. Then they get back to near the gym, and there's a woman with one of the carts selling noodle soup, and they'll ask for a glass of water, and they're like chucking water over themselves to look like they've been sweating, you know. And you don't get that with the Western fighters. You know, they're there, they've got that goal. You know, they want to train, they're hungry to train. There are problems with them, but they do tend to be so much easier to deal with than the Thai fighters.
And do you find, for the most part, you know, like a lot of people, you know, you hear a lot of stories everyone tells, like, I'm going over to Thailand because I want to live the dream. I want to train like a Thai. And then when it comes to actually doing that in practice, it doesn't hold up as well. Do you find training, you know, Westerners can just integrate and train the way Thais train, or it has to be tweaked a little bit? Like, well, what's sort of your take on that?
It has to be tweaked a little bit. I mean, you have to tell some people to calm down a little bit, you know, obviously, because some people come out here and I want to train the Thai way, I want to train as hard as the Thais, and you know, they get burnt out in about 3 days because they're not used to it, you know. So you have to calm people down sometimes, but you know, yeah, definitely there's a lot that kind of you have to tweak it a little bit. I mean, we try not to at my gym. We try and train everyone exactly the same way, push them hard, you know, but not everyone's capable of doing that. And you know, sometimes you have to have a word with the trainers, like you let him have the morning off, you know, because otherwise he's going to be burnt out, you know.
Yeah. Are you finding, you know, as things change, because obviously, like, well, I want to get into this in more detail, but the Muay Thai scene within Thailand is changing a lot the last few years. Are you finding that foreigners who come to train, because I know a lot of that whole live the dream idea was, you know, I want to fight in the stadiums, I want to fight in Ajadamnon. Are you finding foreigners' objectives of training, they're more interested in maybe Max Muaythai and things like this? Like, are you finding the priorities are different, or Westerners, you know, they want the same things?
I think for the guys that kind of really know the sport, they're still, you know, their dream is to fight at the main stadiums. But, you know, there has to be a bit of realism and some, you know, for them as well, you know, 73 kilo English guy fighting at Lumpini or Ratchaman, it's not very high up on the Thai agenda of the gamblers, basically, you know, to come and watch. So there are limitations in that sense. Shows like Max and Super Champ, MX when it was around, you know, they've given a bit more of an opportunity to kind of not just fight, make decent money as well. I mean, still by Western standards, it's still low, you know, but you know, Lumpini Stadium or Ratchaman, when if you're fighting on a Sunday evening, it's like maybe 15 people and dogs watching the fights, you know, because everyone's been gambling on the TV shows all day. All the big gamblers don't go in. The card's very low key. They're not going to get a lot of money, you know. Whereas at Max, you know, you could maybe make 10 times that, you know, just through the purse alone, plus the bonuses, you stitch bonuses, knockout bonuses. Yeah. And also, it's kind of it's given them more of a platform as well, because you know, these shows are heavily promoted on TV, online. So it gets you known quicker as well. I mean, some people are complaining it's not true Muay Thai, it's 3 rounds or whatever, but it's you know, a lot of people do want to fight on those shows. The dream there is for Lumpini, but you know, the reality is, unless you're kind of like maybe 60 kilos, 60 to 65 kilos, and you're very, very, very good, I mean, top draw, you're not going to get known there, and you're not going to make any money there. You know, that's the harsh reality, unfortunately.
And do you find often, you know, do you get Westerners coming in saying like, you know, oh, I want to fight at Lumpini, I want to fight around, and you kind of have to rein them in and say, it's probably not going to work like that?
Yeah. I mean, you know, you get people coming in and they've never had a fight before, and oh, when am I going to fight? When am I going to fight? And you kind of like, slow down, son. You know, learn to walk before you can run. You know, there is a bit of that, you know, and like I say, the expectation, I want to fight Lumpini, and then when they do, and they're kind of getting 2,000 baht and you know, fighting in an empty stadium, it's kind of the reality, it kicks in a little bit then, you know. But and again, it's with the size as well. A lot of Westerners, 70 kilos, like David, you know, he was 76, 78 kilos. Trying to get him a fight was tough at times, you know.
Yeah.
Unless he's fighting another foreigner. I think we did get him one fight with a Thai at Lumpini.
Yeah.
But it's never easy, you know, and you have to just, you know, sometimes they just let them know that it's not going to happen overnight, you know, because there's so many variables. Like weight is a big one, you know, finding an opponent, you know.
Yeah, and we'll come back to this kind of idea, like what's going on with the new shows, but we'll circle back a little bit. So you said what kind of when you were first going to Thailand, you talked about the golden era, and people like Muay Thai fans, like they really kind of, it's like the fabled golden era of Muay Thai.
Yeah.
You know, and so kind of explain, if you will, kind of some of your favorite fighters from the golden era that sort of you came up watching then, and then let's talk about what are the main differences between the golden era and the style of Muay Thai in the stadiums today, if you will?
I mean, there were so many good fighters back in the golden era, you know, and so many big gyms. The money was way more than they're getting now, you know. I mean, I trained at Sortanikon Gym, which was a very big gym at the time. The owner was a big mafia boss, one of the original kind of godfathers. He actually got assassinated just before I went there the first time. But a lot of champions from that gym. And there's one kid, Boon Lai, who was the star of the gym at the time, Boon Lai Sortanikon. He fought all the big names. He was kind of like, he was on 200,000 baht a fight back then. And, you know, this is in 1991, 1992. And that's top money now. And it's only recently, in the last couple of years, that the fighters have managed to get back up to that.
Yeah. Kind
of, back when I was at Kiatphontip, and Anawat was at the top of the game. He was probably the highest paid fighter at the time in Thailand. He was getting 150,000 baht. And so you're moving on 30 odd years and the money's stayed the same, but the cost of living's drastically shot up, you know. So there's not as many fighters now as there was, nowhere near as many, you know, because there's so many other options for the kids to make money as well. It's a very tough sport, you know. But back in the golden era, I mean, you know, going to see people like Boon Lai and Samson Isan, you know, we could be here all day just me talking about some of my favourite fighters from then, to be honest. But it was special, you know, the atmosphere. Like I said, there was like ringside would be ram-packed, and you probably maybe have no more than 10 foreigners there. Whereas, like I say, now it's all foreigners. There's maybe 2 Thais that have paid to go in and sit ringside, and they're the kind of like you're really high up, serious guys that get, you know, gamblers that are kind of they don't need to go and stand. They've got people running that take their bets for them, and you know that's it just doesn't happen anymore like it used to that way. And the crowds are so much bigger, the atmosphere, the fights were different. You know, the scoring. There was probably more people gambling back then. There was more bets going on, bigger bets, but the fights sold themselves and the sport sold itself. So people would go just to watch the fights as well. Whereas nowadays, it's the gambling community's got such a big influence on it. It's almost like what they say goes. You know, the way the fights are scored now, it's kind of like first 2 rounds, the boxers just dance, don't do anything. There may be action picks up in round 3. Round 4 is a big round, the money round, you know, they'd say. And if one fighter's well ahead at the end of the 4th round, the 5th round, they're just walking around and dancing, you know, and looking at each other and touching gloves. And so people, it's just driven people away. There's other things that have driven people away as well. Mobile phones, this, you know, the internet. There's so many other things for people to do with their spare time now, and you know, people still interested in sport. They're still interested in gambling, but they're like, why do I sit in traffic for 2 hours or to get to the stadium, pay $500 to get in, when I can just sit at home and go on Facebook and check the odds and ring up my bookmaker and put a bet on, and do you know what I mean? So you know, the crowds have dropped drastically. You know, the gambling hold has made the fights a lot different to they used to be. You know, a lot of times now with fights, people are scratching their head at the end of it, like, how did he win? The gamblers in their head, you know, they'll kind of dictate who wins a fight now, whereas in the past it was, you know, it tended to be they'd fight maybe not super hard from round one, but they'd start fighting a lot quicker, and you know, it'd go right to the death often. You know, a lot more skill involved, I would say. You know, back then, whereas now it's kind of almost become a little bit clinch and knee orientated, where the power clinchers, the guys that are really good at making weight, big, tall, strong guys, you know, they can get outscored for 3 rounds, but then round 4 they just get the guy in a clinch and he looks weak in the clinch, fry him on the floor a couple of times, and boom, they're ahead. You know. Whereas back in the day, the clinch and knee guys, they could box a bit as well, and they had all the other technique, and the technical guys had, you know, they'd have more chance of beating these strong power clinches, you know, because the fights were scored differently.
Yeah,
and the gamblers didn't have that influence.
Yeah, if looking at it now, because like COVID's done a lot of shit with us there, but it seems like even like you're seeing well, we're just watching a lot of shows, that the clinching seems to get breaking up a lot earlier now. Well,
maybe that's the COVID thing, you know, because once the fights, once they started allowing the fights again, they kind of put into it that they're not allowing them to clinch so much.
Yeah, that's going to change the landscape, you think?
Maybe. I mean, you know, it all depends on what happens once the whole pandemic clears up. You know, are they going to go back to letting them clinch? And you know, and it's still that whole philosophy of the power and the strength. You know, you get a guy and you just throw him down, or you get him in the lock and pull the neck down, and the guy looks weak. You know, straight away the odds, boom, they go straight towards the strong guy. You know.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, and so speaking of the way that kind of like that gambling influence and the other influences you mentioned have sort of changed the entertainment value and kind of, I guess, the stylistic flair of the fighters in the sport.
Yeah.
Is that something that you think it's just going this way now, or do you think, you know, there could be any kind of resurgence of that more golden era style in the stadiums?
I think it'd be difficult. It'd be difficult because, like I say, the gamblers have got that much hold on it. You know, there's almost that kind of fear with the promoters and the stadiums. You know, that if they don't get their way, you know, no one's going to come, and if they don't come, the stadium struggle. Well, the stadium don't struggle so much because they get paid the rent no matter.
Yeah.
But the promoters, you know, they need bodies in the stadium to pay for tickets. Otherwise, then they haven't got the money to pay the fighters, and then the purses will go down, and you know, so there's that kind of general kind of paranoia that they can't upset the gambling community, you know. But in the other sense, it's kind of brought the whole entertainment Muay Thai back into the frame a little bit. Although that's maybe not quite brought back the classic style, you know, like shows like Max and Super Champ, because they're pushing on, oh, we want to fight, we want a real rock'em sock'em war. So you got to go forward, you got to go forward. So if you're a technical guy, you kind of suffering a little bit of Max as well in Super Champ, because they don't want the guy sitting back and showing all the IQ and just picking the guy off as he rushes in. That's kind of not what they're looking for. So it's kind of like a unfortunate side of that as well. That's kind of not letting the real classic guys put on a show so much, you know.
Yeah. And do you find, do you find the growth of that Max Muaythai Super Champ Muay Extreme model has kind of changed the way things are getting done in Thailand, or do you think sort of the top stadium gyms kind of ignore that format and just think stadiums, and it's a little bit more about the middle?
Yeah, I mean, you know, a lot of the top gyms, like I said, I mentioned a couple of Jit Mung Non, PK Sanchai, Pechindi. They don't need Max, you know. They got their top guys, and they're involved in gambling themselves, so they don't really need it so much, you know. They know that their guys, like the likes of Rok Tang or Gao Na or whatever, they're getting a decent purse, and also the owner or whoever they're able to gamble. So it's not an issue for them. But I mean, it's helped a lot of smaller gyms, you know, that have got an opportunity now for the fighters to get a regular fight. And so it's kind of changed it in some ways. You know, there's a lot of gyms that kind of wouldn't have the recognition, and also the fighters wouldn't have earned the money that are able to do that now because of these shows, you know. So it's definitely got its pluses.
Yeah. And considering that I find in conversations that I have, a lot of people that really came up on that, you know, that classic golden era style.
Yeah.
They are quite, you know, they're not really sold on the entertainment style of Muay Thai. They don't really like Max but the golden era. And you do commentary for Max, and you do some work with One Championship as well, which I would kind of put in that model also. So did you like it right away when you saw things going towards the entertainment style? Like, what were your initial thoughts?
I mean, it's kind of been not a breath of fresh air. But I mean, this whole COVID thing, it's been hard for me because I've lost a lot of money because obviously I'm not commentating as much, and, you know, but I've been going back to the stadiums more. And I'll be totally honest with you, I've been loving it, you know, the 5-round fights and the top level guys. But I always really enjoyed Max as well. I mean, they've had some incredible fights there. I mean, if you just want to sit back and watch two guys go at it and, you know, back and forth in a real war, then there's been some incredible fights at Max, and, you know, I enjoy that as well, you know. So I'm kind of lucky. I enjoy all sides of it. I enjoy a clinch and knee war, you know. I enjoy a real classic golden era style technical matchup, but I also enjoy a slugfest. So you know, so it's you know, it's a win-win for me. Do you know what I mean? And it's good to see people getting back into Muay Thai. You know, the Max ratings I'm not sure they're as strong now, but at one point they were huge. Everyone was watching it because it was a chance to watch fights that people actually, from round one, they fought, you know, and the judging, it wasn't kind of biased towards like who the gamblers thought should win. You know, if you thought red corner won, 9 out of 10 times he won, you know, on the weapons scored, that kind of thing, which is also kind of, I think has brought a lot of people Thai wise back to enjoying it. You know, there's so many complain now about they haven't got a clue how a certain fighter won. You know, it's like literally every week you go on Facebook, if you can read Thai and understand Thai, the comments on the fight posts afterwards, you know, it's just like, how did he win? How did he win? You know, and it's all because it's all based more on the odds now than it is on the actual what's thrown in the fight. You know.
Yeah, definitely. So, just switching gears a little bit from now, because I want to try and hit a little bit of everything this episode. Like I said, this episode could go a long time if we were allowed to. But yourself, like, fantastic photography, you know, as we see. Were you always like a student of photography? Was it something you always did?
No, it was kind of something I just fell into and kind of fell in love with. Again, it was, you know, obviously Muay Thai I fell in love with when I first started doing that. With photography, it was, I was living up in Ubon, and, you know, it was 2001, I suppose. And I'd never really thought that much. I mean, I used to have a camera and take pictures on holiday, that kind of thing. But there was a Japanese guy used to come. There was a Japanese guy we was helping with Nguwon's gym, Sasaki, and there's a Japanese photographer, Hiroshi Soda, and he's kind of he was an ex-fighter in Japan, and he was taking photos in the stadiums. And it was when I first started getting into journalism. I bought a fairly decent camera at the time, but it wasn't really suited, as I found out, to taking action shots. But and Hiroshi had come up to the gym because he was mates with Sasaki, and he'd had this like Nikon D1, which was the very first digital, like kind of proper pro sports camera. And you know, I'd see him with this big lens, and he'd be firing off shots like a machine gun. Like, wow, this is kind of cool, you know. And I want to take good pictures as well. And I was on Axe Kickboxing at the time, which is how I kind of really got into. I don't know if anyone remembers that forum. How I kind of got into got into doing journalism, really. And there was an Australian photographer, I forget his name, is it Paul Kapka, possibly? Very, you know, and on Max, he was on Axe, sorry, he was a big name. Everyone was up sharing his pictures. And they were beautiful pictures, you know, real kind of capturing the atmosphere and the emotion. And I'd like to get some pictures like that. And then I got a kind of a lower level DSLR. I couldn't afford the D1, or I think it was maybe a D2 by then. And it just self-taught really, just going to the stadiums, and because I've already got the connections with all the press guys there and knew a few of them. I was commentating a small show kind of just outside Bangkok, so I got to know the Muay guys through that, and it just kind of snowballed from there. It was self-taught really, you know. I just kind of went as I went along. I've maybe started taking pictures about 2004 and just kind of got better and better cameras and got better at it really.
Yeah.
Did you find it was difficult starting out with the photography to get kind of that accessibility to be ringside? Did you find it difficult to kind of get the opportunity to get in on big shows?
Yeah, without a doubt, you know. And there was, you know, like I said, I got to know all the main press guys in Thailand now, and most of my friends, you know, at the time. And there was one photographer at Muay, and he was a proper pain in the backside. He was kind of like a bit old school, you know, probably a bit pro-Thai, anti-foreigner, maybe in his outlook. You know, I don't want to come out and say, yeah, he was an out-and-out kind of racist, but he's like, he didn't particularly like foreigners too much. And he'd make it hard, you know, at Lumpini, he'd go to one of the main Lumpini guys, oh, look, the foreigners around there taking pictures. They're taking pictures to sell them. There's people trying to work it and they can't take pictures. Oh, and, you know, but because I've made a few connections, that kind of got ironed out. And over time, he kind of warmed a bit. And next thing you know, we're swapping pictures and having a laugh. You know, he was never someone I particularly grew to like, though. But yeah, there was a lot of that, you know. And but you know, I think if you kind of going back to the whole cultural thing, if you know how to conduct yourself in Thai culture, you know, respectful, quiet, polite, that goes a long way. And obviously speaking the language as well. So I kind of always made sure I got friendly with the guys that were in charge of press at the stadiums. And so after a while, it got to the point where, you know, I wouldn't have a problem at all, you know.
So yeah, you do your own journalist stuff, like through Muaythai Focus.
Yeah.
Was Muay Thai 2000 your thing, or was that just the thing that you were a part of?
Muay Thai 2000 is still going now. It was someone that gave me a lot of breaks and helped me to get where I am now. The guy that runs it, a guy called Mitnakon. He's I won't say his full time name. He's a bit of a mouthful. His nickname Mitnakon, and he's part of Pechindi, and he's had his own promotion of Rational One Mitchai. And Muay Thai 2000 was his website, and it worked out. When I started at Khao Samret, the owner of Khao Samret took me to this stadium where just outside Bangkok, where they had this show every Tuesday, and he was a promoter one night. Sang Chien Noi was a promoter there, and they said, "Oh, do you fancy doing some commentary?" And I thought, well, why not? I'll give it a go. You know, I'd never done it before, but I'll give it a try. So that's how I started commentating. And I was doing it there one night a week on my own as well for 2 hours, which was a bit of a pain. But and then he's the boss at Khao Samret helped me a lot. He's kind of like, oh, straight away, oh, take a picture of him, the Muay Siam. So they put a full page article with my picture in Muay Siam. Yeah, he's guys from England. He's commentating now at so-and-so. And this Mitnakon, he was back then, he was selling DVDs on Muay Thai 2000, and he had like a Yod Sanklai one and a best of so-and-so, whatever. Oh, would you commentate on my DVD? So I did a couple of them for him. And next thing you know, he's like, yeah, Muay Thai 2000, you're always taking pictures. You want to put some pictures on there? And he just gave me the job to sort of do the English articles on there and put the pictures up. And then he got me, Pechindi were looking for someone to put English commentary on at the old Lumpini Stadium on one of their channels. And he's called me up, oh, can you do it? Yeah, without a doubt. You know, I'll be there in a flash, you know. So started at Lumpini on a Saturday evening doing some English commentary along with Boat, who's the boss of Pechindi now, and a couple of others. So all good learning experience. In the stadium, they used to have an army. There's an army channel, TGN. It's owned by the army, and they used to have an afternoon show at Lumpini as well. And then one of the army guys, one of the colonels that was kind of on the board at Lumpini, said, "Oh, well, we'd like to have you on that show as well. Will you do that?" So I ended up doing 2 days of commentary on there, and just kind of all snowballed from there, really. And but going back, Mitnakon, he was someone that helped me a lot. Invited me to work on Muay Thai 2000 and commentary and that kind of thing. So that's kind of how I've got where I am, you know, just through a bit of luck and connections, you know.
I've got another listener question for you as well from Andrew Parnham from PGA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He's asking, do you miss the Muay Thai Focus forum days? They were great.
Well, yeah, I do. You know, there were some good times on there, and there were some great people, very knowledgeable people that always used to post on there a lot. There was myself. What was his name on the forum? Celtic or the Cell, which is Kevin Noon, who runs Sign Fighting, who's now. So he was always on there. Tim, the owner of Sompinong in Bangkok. Matthew Dean used to post on there. Matthew Dean's a famous kind of pop star TV celebrity in Thailand, and he owns the Kong Sitar gym, and he'd regularly post. He had some great knowledge on there and some good banter as well. You know, I mean, I'm obviously English, and we like to take the piss a bit, and you know, there's a lot of that kind of thing going on there. But unfortunately, it's kind of Facebook kind of killed the forums off, didn't it? You know, it's kind of, it got to the point where everyone's on Facebook, and also I was spending more time deleting spam posts and deleting spam members than it was kind of worth my while, really. But it was good times. I miss those times. Axe kickboxing as well. Used to have some real laughs on there, some real good banter and piss taking as well, which was good.
Nice.
How you been finding, like, you had this kind of transition to this like social media kind of age now with like your gym and also your work? It's like,
yeah, I mean, obviously I'm probably getting on a bit too much for it now. I mean, I'm at this point now where kind of with social media, it's kind of Facebook in particular. I'm kind of getting a bit anti it, you know, not purely for, you know, because there's so much kind of I don't know, polarization and so much bullshit on there and drama, and you know, quite a few people I know are kind of blocking it. But at the same time, you know, I need to get out there. I need to promote my gym. I need to, you know, try and make myself more well known. Like I said, I'm a massive procrastinator, so I should spend a lot more time working on it than I do. And unfortunately, at my age, you're kind of like, oh, this is a lot of old.
I mean, you don't have a TikTok account then?
I have got one, but I've got a TikTok on my phone, but I've never registered an account, and I'm kind of like, do I really need to be doing TikTok? And who wants to watch it? Do you know what I mean?
All right, mate. I reckon you get a pretty big following.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's massive in Thailand. TikTok, it's huge.
Oh, they should kind of eat it up.
They love their social media, but like I said, for me, you know, I think it's causing a lot of problems in the world now, unfortunately. But
yes,
it's one of those things. It's made the whole kind of Muay Thai media, and it's made it a lot more democratic. Everyone can do it now. Everyone can start a page up, a media page, and you know, you just got to put the work in it. So it's got its pluses, but it's also got a lot of downsides, isn't it?
Definitely.
I got a couple more questions for you, just that I really wanted to get your thoughts on while we've got you. We touched a bit on sort of your kind of favourite names from back in the golden era, some of your favourite fighters. What about the current era? Like, kind of, who are your top fighters to watch in this day and age?
Oh God! Again, you know, there's lots of fighters I love to watch. You know, Rotang, I love that kind of aggressive, tough guy, walk forward style. A lot of people give him stick. Oh, he's just you know, but it makes for exciting fights. You know, I love the technical guys, Rung Narai, Superlek, people like that. You know, so many again. You know, where do I start? I would say who's my favourite right now. I wouldn't say I've got a particular favourite, but you know, this sport still is strong. There's still a lot of great fighters coming through. You know, I don't know if you guys saw, there was the R1 UFA show the other week, and the very first fight, these two young kids fighting.
Yeah, that was unreal.
I'm not a massive fan of watching kids fight, to be honest myself, but just the skill and the talent, you know, and you just see that kid, but you know, he could end up easily being another Sanchai, but he also end up getting bored and retiring. He's 15. You know, he's fighting a 2 versus 1 fight, I think, next month somewhere in the south of Thailand. I think, you know, he's that good. And he's doing like Sanchai did when he fought Saget down Petbunchu, doing a 2 versus 1. But yeah, there's a lot of great talent out there still. Maybe not as, well, I say not maybe, nowhere near as much as there was back in the past. But it's still not dead yet. You know, there's still a lot of great fighters out there to watch.
Yeah, and one of my other questions was because we touched on it a little bit, but I'm interested to get your thoughts. You mentioned that's sort of show at the New World Stadium the other week.
What's Sam?
Yeah, you've got sort of you have a handle on sort of every kind of dimension of Muay Thai at the moment because they are quite distinctly different, like we said, from the stadiums to the entertainment. And then I kind of feel like there is almost an emerging hybrid, like we won Sook on Fridays and that show at the World Siam Stadium. It's a little bit, I think they're kind of trying to find a medium between that entertainment, kind of, at least in
definitely. They're trying to get people, like Muay Man Wan Sook. There's quite a few more foreigners going to be going on the shows in the not too distant future. And they've invested in the lights and it's a nice setup if you go in there. I mean, the stadium's a little bit, it's not the best stadium in Thailand, but they've kind of set it up with a VIP area. If you want to go in the VIP area, they've got kind of waiters delivering drinks and food, and there's a DJ there. So they're trying to move away from that whole it's just a stadium full of old guys spitting on the floor and swearing at the boxers and betting money, and calling the ref every name under the sun or the judges when the fight is and they lose money. They're trying to move away from that, which is to be applauded. Really, it does need more shows like that.
Yeah, so I was just kind of like, because of course as well we work with One Championship, which is kind of like its own new thing too. What do you think? Do you think there's one of these avenues is the future of Muay Thai, so to speak? Like, are we moving in another direction, or?
I mean, a lot of people kind of complain about the purists. There's always a lot of purists kind of complain about, it's the essence of Muay Thai isn't there. It's 3 rounds, or there's no white crew, or blah blah blah. But Muay Thai has been kind of growing in the West for a long time now, and it's got to where it is. And I don't personally think it's going to get much bigger if it stays as it is. It's going to be a cult sport, followed by a few, enjoyed by a few. I mean, I love it. I wouldn't follow anything else. But something like One, where they're mixing the shows with the MMA fights, and they've got the Super Series. You've got kickboxing, Muay Thai. Some of the fighters are crossing over and fighting both. I think it's great. It's because for me the main thing is the fighters are getting the opportunity to really earn decent money. All right, you might not have the wire crew, you might not have the music. So is it true Muay Thai? Possibly not. But you still got the 8 weapons. Scoring is a bit different. Yeah, it is. But do we really need to keep watching a sport where guys that are just betting on the fights are deciding who's winning? And it's, for me, I think it's a great thing, and I think One would probably be the ones that will really push the sport that little bit further. Where it depends on how long One keep going. I hope it keep going for a long time because I love working for them as well. It's a different direction for me being a judge, but and it's a totally different way of watching fights. But I've kind of, a lot of the people kind of complaining about the essence of Muay Thai is going. They're kind of, a lot of the times they're people from the West that have got a job and they're earning money and they've got a comfortable life, And I've been around Thailand for 30 odd years, and I've seen ex-champions begging for money outside the stadium, and a lot of them end up just drunk or whatever, or holding pads for other fighters, and they got nothing. They just to see these guys like now, Rotang and people like that, they're earning big money now, and I think it's great, and that's what it needs. These guys should be earning way more than they are. Basically, when you see the money that boxers are earning, UFC guys maybe not so much, but they're still earning decent money. Muay Thai fighters should be getting that money, but if they keep the essence and the whole kind of focus on how it is in the stadiums now, they're never going to get that money. The sport's never going to grow enough, outside of Thailand.
Yeah, you got to play the game to expand appeal a little bit, right?
Yeah, definitely. You're just being realistic. Where do you want the sport to go? I mean, I'd love to see the whole world watching Lumpini title fight between so and so and so and so, but it will never happen in a million years unless something is done, and people have got to maybe learn to accept those differences a little bit.
Yeah.
Ask the fighters what they want at the end of the day. That's the way to look at it. You know,
Yeah.
I'm sure like 10 out of 10 the fighters will prefer to accept them changes and a little bit. I mean, have a balance where that Thai culture, the Muay Thai, is still a part of it, but you know, they're drawing a bigger audience in, and they're able to earn good money, you know, basically.
Yeah, and it's good that you can see with one as well. It's like the fights will just, the winner will win in terms of like, and you'll see, because like, you got someone like Pech Marikot, just an absolute savage. And then you got someone else like on the upside, like Nong O, just technically brilliant. Like, like it's not like depending on sort of thing. Yeah.
If they're scoring now, according to the criteria, and they're scoring more than the opponent, they should win, you know, not because, like in Thailand, for example, I'm just using the example, I'm not kind of running down the gyms or anything like that, but, you know, because this red corner's from PK Sanchai and blue corner's from some tiny gym up in Buriram or whatever with no real clout in the gambling community, yet the blue corner's outscored the red corner, but because he's from PK Sanchai, straight away, he's, you know, blue's not going to be able to do enough to beat him, you know. Because there's a thing in Thailand now with the Nasser, you know, and they'll say, oh, Nasser Kang, oh, he's Nasser is really strong. He's from PK. He's got so-and-so betting on him. He's got so-and-so, you know. And it makes it harder for the guy that actually probably should have won the fight to actually win the fight, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're a judge on one as well. Like, is there any kind of, like, for people just watching, that they might be used to, you know, seeing the stadiums and that, is there any different considerations in actually scoring like one Muay Thai fights that are different?
I mean, there's so many nuances in the stadium fights, you know. We could probably talk all day on that, you know, but yeah, I mean, you know, one is priorities on effects. It's kind of how Muay Thai should be scored to a certain degree, you know, who does the more damage, who's landing the harder shots, you know, who's hurting the opponent, who's, you know, whereas in Muay Thai, it's kind of like who's got the better stance and looks more in control, and, you know, might not be landing, but he's controlling the ring better, he's soaking up. Things like gum shield comes out in a Muay Thai fight. If your gum shield comes out, it's almost like getting taken an 8 count, you know, or you hook your arm over the ropes. If you hook your arm over the ropes and the referee warns you for it, again, that's almost like taking an 8 count. You know, there's so much kind of, and again, that influence from the gamblers, you know, of it's just purely on what you're doing to your opponent, who's scoring the more, who's landing the harder, more effective shots, you know, which is, you know, really how it should be, I think.
Yeah, and then it's like all tools score the same.
All score. But that's kind of a little bit of a not cliche, but you know, there is something to it that maybe the kicks and knees will be seen as scoring more.
It's sometimes like in Australia, like in like some little other promotions, they have the thing where they go, oh, like kicks always score higher than punches. Like, why? It shouldn't.
But
it's doing damage.
It doesn't. It's, you know, it's all about damage. You know, you'll see guys like maybe Rottang, you know, his last fight with Gao, he won that through landing effective punches, basically. So that's kind of a little bit of a fallacy. But the way, you know, to maybe describe it, why do knees score more than punches? You know, if you see a guy in a 5-round fight, guy landing hard with the knees and very strong in a clinch, and you'll often see the opponent worn out by the end of the fight, you know, because he's taken on his, and they sap your energy, they sap your strength. So that's seen as having more effect. Whereas you can see a guy punching, he's coming forward. The guy's got a good chin, and he's tough, and just keeps coming and walking through those punches. They're not really having that effect. You know what I mean? That's kind of how they see it. Whereas a lot of hard body kicks will slow a guy down, and you'll see him kind of maybe gas up towards the end of the fight. Whereas some fighters can take punches all day long, and you know, it's literally there is very little effect on them. That's kind of the theory behind it. But if you go in there and you like Rottang and you land with hard punches and the opponent staggers or he's wobbled, then there you're going to win the fight. You know.
Yeah, definitely. Nice. Any more questions?
Yeah, final question I had that I'd love to get your thoughts on. So, like we've said, you know, you've been in the game as far as running the gym and just observing Muay Thai and observing gyms for a long time. If you're talking to, you know, a foreign fighter and they're telling you, you know, oh, I'm going to go live the dream. I want to come to Thailand. I want to do it the Thai way. You know, I really want to have a run at it. Is there like one main piece of advice, one thing you think foreigners coming over don't understand? Like, what's the the key piece of wisdom you would pass on to someone sort of before they make a move like that maybe they wouldn't understand?
I mean, obviously the main thing, keep your expectations low.
Yep.
Be prepared to work very hard. You know, don't just imagine it's going to come overnight. Sometimes it might do. You might get a lucky break, but you're going to just be prepared to work very, 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 very hard, and for probably very, very little reward as well. You know, it's a very tough life. You know, the guys, you know, even like say Damon Alamos or people like that, the guys that have made it, you know, they've had a long time of living hand to mouth. You know, a lot of guys, they can't afford to go out and, you know, get a McDonald's, you know, until the next fight or whatever, because they're just living just in the gym, and the fight purses are so low. You know, you can spend it in a day, the next day after, and you're back to having no money again. You know, so you know, you've got to be prepared for a tough life. You know, and it builds character, I suppose. That's where the guys shine through, are the ones that can deal with it and learn from it and move on from it. You know, just keep your expectations very low. Don't expect expect too much. Like anything in life, you know, maybe if you're trying to achieve anything, they always say set little goals. You know, don't set a massive goal. Right, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to become Lumpini champion in a year, because you know, you're just going to be going back to England or wherever with a broken heart and Muay Thai, I hate that. You know, set those little goals so you keep achieving them, and just be prepared to work your socks off. Basically, that's all you can do. You know.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
No, that's it. Solid advice. Nice.
And listen to your trainer as well. Listen to your trainers. You know, you don't know it all before you come. That can be a headache. You know, I've had it with fighters. I've got one fighter now that comes to my gym a lot, and I just keep taking the piss out of them. Yeah, but don't do this again. You're going to remind me of that for the rest of my life. Yeah, probably. But you've got to listen to your trainers. You know, not just do stupid shit because you think you know better halfway through a fight. Because 9 times out of 10, that'll cost you the fight.
That's right. Best trainers to keep you accountable always.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Rob, mate, this has been awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for
It's
coming
been
on.
great. It's been great. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been really appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
Where can people catch you? Like, you know, for your gym, also your Muaythai Focus and that?
Muaythai Focus on Instagram and Facebook. Obviously, Kiatphontip Gym. Obviously Max doing the commentary. Other than that, that's probably about it, really. Yeah,
fair.
Yeah.
Like, you know, hopefully when international borders open again, we can give you a visit.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. Anytime.
Definitely, yeah. So we'll get you to stick around after I play the intro and that. But hey, everyone else, you know where to find us. Listen to the outro where you can follow us. Also, remember, just share our stuff if you love it, okay? And if you don't, if you want to say something, say something bad about it and go, look at these dickheads. Like, that's fine. Publicity's publicity.
I might have that bit covered.
Okay. All right. Until next time, guys. Catch you later.
See ya.